Thank you very much. Welcome you all in this wonderful venue. Thank you, dear Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Ms. Buric, dear ministers, delegates. It is really a pleasure for me to welcome you all in this fantastic, superb venue, Ca' Giustiniano on the Grand Canal. And indeed, thank you so much to the Italian authorities, the governor of the Veneto region, Mr. Luca Zaia. Please stand for an applause. The Mayor of Venice, Mr. Luigi Brugnaro, please. The representative of central government, Mr. Vittorio Zappalorto. I really wanted to express in front of all of you my sincere gratitude to the authorities in Venice for having contributed to the organization of this conference, because indeed, without their help and their support, it would have been simply impossible to have such conference in this moment. So, grazie di cuore a tutti voi per questa accoglienza raffinata, come sempre in Veneto, ma a Venezia in particolare, e generosissima. Avevo già avuto modo di sperimentare la vostra accoglienza in altri incontri internazionali, perché regolarmente la Commissione di Venezia si riunisce qui, per il nome anche che porta, ma questa sera è davvero una sera speciale. And let me add just a word to address my thanks to the President of la Biennale di Venezia, Mr. Roberto Cicutto. This palace hosts the headquarters of the Biennale, one of the most prestigious cultural institutions in the world, established in 1895, featuring art, music, theater, and cinema. The famous Venice Film Festival is the oldest film festival in history. We have said a lot of important reflection. We have worked so hard in our afternoon. I think that we made a lot of progress in this field of restorative justice, so I don't want to add a single word. I would like to leave the floor to my dear friend, distinguished journalist, Mario Calabresi, who will introduce us to a special event. I consider that the next half an hour will be the most important part of our work, and I think that it will leave a mark in our evening and hopefully in our work. So Mario Calabresi, thank you so much. I've already introduced him with a few words in our afternoon. Mario Calabresi is one of the first witnesses of one of the most brutal murders that touched his life and his family at the beginning of the era of the years that started in the internal terrorism in Italy in the 70s and 80s. He has many things to say, many things to tell us, and his presence here is really invaluable for our work. Thank you for accepting and for coming here. Thank you.
Good evening, ministers and delegates, and all the authorities present here tonight. It is truly an honor to be standing in front of you today, addressing such a distinguished audience. And I would like to extend my thanks to Marta Cartabia, our Italian Minister of Justice, for the invitation and the way she shows great interest towards the victim of crimes and to restorative justice. Before I begin, I would like to tell briefly about myself. Besides being a journalist, I'm also a writer and a former editor-in-chief of two of the main newspapers in Italy. However, my own personal story explains my interest in restorative justice. My father, a police detective, was killed by terrorists in 1972, when I was 2 years old. His murder opened the season of political terrorism in Italy, the so-called Years of Lead. My mother, at that time, was 25 years old, widowed with 3 little kids. She has never cultivated hatred, anger, or resentment. On the contrary, she has taught us the values of reconciliation, forgiveness, and reprieve. I have always been impressed by the South African courage to deal with a terrible inheritance. Tonight, thanks to 2 extraordinary guests, we will explore that experience to understand the real case of restorative justice in practice. The discussion will not only be about the virtues of reconciliation, but also about the difficult questions. It's really important to consider what needs come first in order to have a real reconciliation. Our first guest this evening is Judge Albie Sachs. Albie Sachs is a South African anti-apartheid activist who was nearly killed by a car bomb in 1988 when he was in exile in Mozambique, leaving him blind in one eye and the loss of his right arm. This incident left him, to the surprise of many, without a feeling of hate. He did not hold rancor, anger, or hatred. As the people around him said, they would find avenge. He was quoted at that time saying, "So, we are going to cut off the arm and blind in one eye the people who did this?" In that period, the idea of soft vengeance came to him. He understood that the most important achievement will be a real change for his country that would lead to real democracy, rule of law, and freedom, instead of a personal vengeance. Therefore, it is a far more profound vengeance than doing to them what they did to us. Albie Sachs definitively possesses a remarkable ability to extract positive emotions from wounding events. After the end of the apartheid, he became an ally of President Nelson Mandela and an architect of the new South African Constitution. Good evening, Mr. Sachs.
Good evening.
How are you? Thank you so much to be here. Thanks a lot to be here with us.
I'm very far away from you and very disappointed. Our problem is we have brilliant scientists in South Africa who tell the truth. And because they are the first to discover the new virus, South Africa is excluded. And I couldn't travel to Venice. So I would ask you one favor. If the cameras can show me the audience, so that at least I can see the people I'm speaking to and wave to them.
We will do it immediately.
Thank you, thank you.
My first question for you is, how were you able to nurture hope and change after the car bomb attack?
But I can't explain it, the reason. I can explain the experience. And it was the 7th of April, 1988, Dia de Mulher Mozambicana. And it's a public holiday, and I'm going to the beach in the morning, and I'm walking, and total darkness. I know something terrible is happening to me. I don't know what it is. Total darkness. I feel I'm being pulled, and I'm shouting, leave me, I would rather die here, but not shouting too loud because I'm a lawyer in a public place. I have a half memory of that. And then complete silence, total darkness, and I hear a voice, and the voice says to me, Albie, this is Ivo Garrido. You're in Maputo Central Hospital. Your arm is in lamentable condition. You must face the future with courage. And I said into the darkness what happened, and a woman's voice said it was a car bomb. And I fainted back into the obscurity, but with a sense of joy. I thought I was being kidnapped to be thrown into jail in South Africa. I knew I was safe in the hands of Frelimo, the Mozambican government. And that moment, every freedom fighter is waiting for, every day, every night, consciously, unconsciously. Will they come for me? Will they come today? Will I be brave? And they'd come for me and they'd try to kill me, and I had survived. And I feel my body, and I discover I've only lost an arm. And I felt total joy, I've only lost an arm. And I had a total conviction that as I got better, my country would get better. And that was 1988. I got better. My country got better. I had that total sense of joy at having survived. I didn't feel anger. I felt uplifted and joyous, and I knew I would learn to walk, I would learn to stand, I would learn to write, I would learn to tie a shoelace, I would learn to do public speaking, and I'd learn to carry on working to create a new constitution for South Africa.
Thank you. Mr. Sachs, could you explain your idea of soft vengeance?
So I'm lying in hospital bed in London, quite joyous. I've survived, but I would feel maybe 4 in the morning, I would wake up. The painkillers have worn off. I'd feel very lonely, very sad. And although I'm not religious, I would sing a song by the great African-American singer Paul Robeson. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. It's not my brother nor my sister. I'm feeling a little bit sorry for myself. I'd fall asleep, I'd wake up, I'd be cheerful again. And then one day I receive a letter. You remember those things? You used to lick the stamps and the envelopes. I open it with my one hand. It says, don't worry, Comrade Albie, we will avenge you. Avenge me? We're going to cut off the arms, we're going to blind in one eye. Is that what we're fighting for? If we get freedom, if we get justice, if we get the rule of law, that will be my soft vengeance. Roses and lilies will grow out of my arm. And that theme of soft vengeance kept coming back to me again and again. And it became the theme of my life afterwards. And soft vengeance is very powerful. Hard vengeance, you are like the others, only you are stronger. Soft vengeance is the triumph of your ideals, your goals, of why I was in the struggle, why I was bombed. And it's seeing humanity lifting itself up and transcending, getting beyond the pain, the hatreds, which can kill you inside if you're full of hatred. It was very liberating for me. And so that theme of soft vengeance then became the title of a book I wrote and the film that was made about my life. And it continues today, that to the extent that the ideals of constitutionalism, of the rule of law, are becoming more and more implanted in our country, that is my soft vengeance.
Thank you. You were one of the first people to suggest tying through telling as a condition of amnesty. Could you tell us how your proposal was received at that time, the proposal of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
Yes, my contribution was very specific. I'm in London, I'm reporting back to the International Catholic Commission that had given us a lot of support in the struggle days. And they put me up in a not very great hotel in King's Cross. And that was relevant because I'm about to go to sleep. There's a knock on the door. They apologize. They say, we've received the fax. You remember faxes? We would tear off the little strips at the side from, I think it's Nelson Mandela, saying there's a crisis in South Africa. The generals are saying that President de Klerk promised them an amnesty, and there's nothing in the new constitutional text about amnesty. And I turned over the piece of paper. The hotel didn't have its own paper. I wrote at the back, we can grant amnesty, but we can't give a blanket amnesty. We'll give amnesty to people who come forward to tell the truth. And that became the heart of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. If you told the truth, even if you tortured, even if you killed, even if you were an assassin, if it was in the course of the struggle for or against apartheid, then you could get amnesty. And it was received reluctantly by the generals, but it gave them a way out. And many people were very angry in the country, and they wanted to see punishment. Those who've given us pain, they must suffer pain themselves. But it was also in part of the whole process of democratic elections. I think without democratic elections, the people would have rejected amnesty. Democratic elections gave us a new government, the optimism, the hope of change and transformation. So the two processes went together. And then the form that the Truth Commission took was very important. Independent people, not machines, not robots, human beings with passion and emotion like Archbishop Tutu, but many others, some of multiple faiths, some of no faith at all. It was important to have a team of independent people, not politicians, not activists in the struggle, presiding. It was important that the violations on all sides, including the side I was on, the liberation struggle, also did bad things. We also had to come forward to the commission. But the most important aspect was that it wasn't just getting facts, collecting facts to write a report. It was very phenomenological. We could hear the cries, we could see the tears. It was very emotional, and that gave it enormous credibility. This was not some strange kind of process. It allowed people to speak their pain, to tell their truth. And it also encouraged those who've done terrible things to come forward and to acknowledge what they'd done. So it was received as something that was happening, important process. Many people today are angry because there hasn't been enough change in South Africa. They feel those police who did terrible things, who didn't go to the Truth Commission, should have been prosecuted. They haven't been prosecuted. So it's a very contested area, but I personally believe it was extremely important for our country and for the world.
What do you think today? What are the most precious lessons from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission?
I think you've got to understand there are four kinds of truth. There is observational truth, microscopic truth with measurements. You get it in a court of law with cross-examination of evidence. You get it in a scientific experiment. Then there's logical truth. It makes a statement, it doesn't depend on evidence. Forensic truth depends on evidential truth and logical truth. But there's another kind of truth that Gandhi spoke about, experiential truth, the truth of something you experience, phenomenological. And there's also dialogical truth. And the strength of our Truth Commission was experiential and dialogical, so that people could identify with those who were testifying. And its emotional impact was very, very, very powerful. Somebody explained it was transforming knowledge into acknowledgement. We knew these things had happened, but they were data, they were abstract facts. Acknowledgement was, how did it happen? How did it feel? What did I do? What could I have done? What would I do? How can we stop it in future? To me, that's got to be the heart of a truth commission, that it's got to be credible and vocal and open and managed with great skill by independent people.
At the end, Mr. Sachs, could you share with us a personal memory and tell us about a special phone call that you received one day?
I'm a judge. I'm not a young judge, but I was middle age when I became a judge. We worked very hard on the Constitutional Court in South Africa. The phone rings, I pick it up. The reception says, there's a man called Henry who says he has an appointment to see you. And I say, send him through. And I go to the security gate, my heart is beating. Boom, 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 boom. Henry had phoned me to say that he was going to the Truth Commission to tell them that he had organized the bomb in my car. Can he see me before he goes there? And I open the door and I see Henry. He's tall and thin like me, but younger. And I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. We never fought, we didn't know each other. It wasn't over passion or power or anything, but he was on that side, I was on this side. And I can see in his eyes, this is the man I tried to kill, and I'm looking at the man who tried to kill me. We go to my chambers, we talk. There's a fascinating connection between us, and he tells me with pride he was clever at school, good at university, and how he rose up in the army to become a senior officer. He's telling me how he became a senior assassin, not even understanding how weird it is that he should brag about how well he did. And he tells me about the bomb, and when it went off, he realized it was the bomb that he'd been responsible for. And eventually I say, Henry, I have to get on with my work. We stand up. And I say, normally I say goodbye, I shake someone's hand. I can't shake your hand. Go to the Truth Commission, tell them what you know, maybe we'll meet one day. We walk back, he's not striding like a soldier as he did when he came in, like a defeated person. I forget about him. 6 months pass, I'm at a party, end of year. It's hot in South Africa at the end of the year. I'm with my friend, the music is very loud, and I hear a voice saying, Albie. I look, it's Henry, I can't believe it. And we get into a corner to get away from the music. And he says, I went to the Truth Commission. I spoke to Bobby and Sue and Farouk, people who'd been in exile with me who could have been victims of the bomb. I told them everything, and you said that one day. I put out my hand and I shook his hand. He went away elated. I almost fainted. And then I heard afterwards he left the party early and he went home, and I was told he cried for 2 weeks. I don't know if it's true. I want to believe it's true. I'm not even checking up. I'd rather believe it may be true than find out it's not true. But for me, that's more important, that Henry cried. Not because I shouted at him, not because I said, I forgive you. He didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't say, I forgive you. But because I treated him as a human being. And I'm glad he came to see me. I'm glad he went to the Truth Commission. That mysterious, the enemy, now became a person. He's not my friend. I won't ask him to go to a movie with me. But if I'm sitting in a bus or a train, he sits next to me. I'll say, oh, Henry, how are you getting on? Because we're now living in the same country. And for me, that's, if you like, soft vengeance. It's much, much more powerful than hard vengeance and punishment. It's truly an example of a believer in restorative justice becoming a beneficiary, myself, of restorative justice. I feel a little freer, a little more liberated, living in the same country with my former enemy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Sachs, for these touching memories. Thanks a lot. Our next guest that I would like to introduce is Professor Pumla Gobodo Madikizela. Pumla Gobodo Madikizela is a professor and holds the South African National Research Foundation Chair in Violent Histories and the Transgenerational Trauma at Stellenbosch University. Her research focuses on trauma in the aftermath of gross human rights violation and on remorse and forgiveness that come about in victim-perpetrator dialogues. Professor Gobodo Madikizela explores ways in which a sense of solidarity and responsible citizenship might be restored through what she terms reparative humanism. She has published widely on victim and perpetrator of human rights violations and forgiveness and remorse. This project has resulted in a book titled Aesthetic of Memory and Narrative of Repair. Another book is A Human Being Died That Night, a South African book on forgiveness. Good evening, Professor Pumla Gobodo Madikizela. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Mario. It's wonderful to see you again.
My question for you are, firstly, how important is a dialogue between victim and perpetrators for a society?
One of the extraordinary things about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is that it showed us the critical importance of this engagement between victims and perpetrators. Without the dialogue, it's not possible to move forward with people living in one country. In South Africa, victims and perpetrators live in one country and sometimes as neighbors. So in order to heal that past, to confront that past and face it, that dialogue can only happen between victims and perpetrators. Perpetrators confronting the truth about what they did. I think the story of Albie illustrates that powerfully. But at a collective level, for people who didn't come to the commission to know that there has been an admission of the crimes that happened in the past, it's very critical. It's the acknowledgement of it that is important. For victims to hear who are the people who did the crime and for them to be validated and affirmed so that they do not live in silence about the pain that they suffered. So that dialogue is very critical.
My second question is about the difficult parts of reconciliation. From your experience, could you explain us what we need to do first in order for reconciliation to be meaningful?
Reconciliation happens because there is, first of all, an acknowledgement that something terrible happened, the crimes happened in the past. That acknowledgement is critical for reconciliation to happen. Now, part of the acknowledgement is that perpetrators face their crimes, face their guilt. A difficulty with reconciliation is that often people who supported criminals and those who perpetrated the crimes avoid facing guilt. Guilt is a very painful emotion, and so they avoid the guilt and not face it. But once these processes of truth commissions happen, they enable perpetrators, or they create the space for perpetrators to face their crimes and to face the guilt. It's possible for perpetrators to just say, I can just tell you what happened without facing the guilt. They can list the crimes and say, these are the things that I did. But until they actually face the guilt and face the fact that they committed crimes and disturbed the society, if that doesn't happen, then reconciliation remains difficult. You also have to keep in mind that these crimes became possible because there was a whole society of, for instance, in South Africa, of white South Africans supporting apartheid, voting for apartheid, making it stronger every day, every year, with every election. So it's not just the perpetrators who pulled the trigger, who tortured people, who disappeared people. It's also a society of supporters of the systems that cause these crimes. So that the second level of acknowledgement has to happen at the level of society for people to have a chance to say that we supported an evil system. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission allows that to happen as well. And so that those processes of acknowledgement and facing the past are very critical. I want to illustrate this with a very powerful example from South Africa. Eugene de Kock, the man whom I interviewed for my book, A Human Being Died That Night, he was known in South Africa as prime evil. He, among many other perpetrators who came to the commission, probably represented, was the embodiment of the evil of apartheid, because he came to be known as the chief assassin of apartheid. He headed up the covert operations unit. He trained death squads. He trained black and white death squads to target people who were opposed to apartheid. When he came to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, widows of men he had murdered came to the hearing and to hear him speak. And when after he had confessed his crimes, he asked to speak with them in private. And when he approached the women, after he approached the women came out of the room feeling that they could forgive Eugene de Kock. And this was the first time victims had actually spoken about forgiving a perpetrator such as Eugene de Kock. We were very intrigued by this. What does it mean, although we had a Truth Commission, what does it mean to forgive someone who had murdered your loved ones in such a violent way? But these women actually meant the forgiveness. And I spoke to them, they said, one of them said, I want to hold de Kock by the hand and to show him that it is possible to change and that he can be a human being again. These are very powerful words. And after this meeting with these widows, I went to see Eugene de Kock to understand where he is with these crimes. And that first meeting, my first encounter with him, when Eugene de Kock described what he did and expressed his remorse, he said to me, I feel as if I could bring back their children, their husband, and say, here are your loved ones. But this is a burden I have to live with. And at that moment, because I could see the pain in his eyes, I reached out with my hand and touched his hand. He was shaking and there were tears in his face. And that for me was a moment of great discovery, because as a Black South African, I never imagined that I could be drawn so closely to someone who had killed my people and so violently. But that moment for me was such a powerful healing moment, although he didn't kill any people who were close to me personally, but he had killed many of my people. But that he could express remorse in that way, and I felt the remorse at the time, and then the women he had spoken to had also expressed the feeling of remorse, the sense of forgiveness for him was such a powerful healing moment. And those are critically important testimonies of the Truth Commission that show that these engagements between victims and perpetrators mean something for the individuals, but for those who are witnessing it, who are watching it happen, it's a healing as well. I tell you this last thing about Eugene de Kock. At one of the hearings where he testified, when he expressed what he felt about his crimes, he expressed regret, there was an applause. People applauded, the whole room full of really mainly Black people in the audience. They applauded. They were feeling so validated by this man who had killed so many Black people. So these stories were so important for the commission and for the country, because here we were, as audiences, mainly Black audiences of people who were targeted by apartheid, listening to this person who was representing apartheid as prime evil, confessing, not just saying this is a list of my crimes, but showing deep sense of remorse. This meant something that changed in the hearts and minds of people who had been wounded by apartheid. So these were some of the observations that are important steps towards reconciliation.
Thank you, Professor. We have time. We have only 2 minutes for a final question. I would like to understand what is the meaning of notions as reconciliation and forgiveness for the post-apartheid generation.
This is the most challenging aspect of our history from this journey of reconciliation. For the younger generation in South Africa, who came into the post-apartheid era with the hope that their lives are going to be different, the lives of their parents are going to be different. However, what's happening in our country now is that they feel that nothing much has changed. And so for them, the process of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has not done much to help them change into, to open up opportunities for them so that it changes their futures. And indeed, even for us who are the generation that lived through apartheid, this is our regret, that the leaders of the government of the ANC have not pursued to the letter some of the goals that Albie Sachs, Nelson Mandela, Archbishop Tutu has set forth for the commission. As we stand now, we are in the future that was imagined, but it has not yielded the promise that people had hoped for. This is why the younger generation are critical today of the concept of reconciliation, because for them, their lives have not changed. They feel actually that they've been betrayed by the leaders of the government today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor, for your clear and really interesting answer. Thank you. Thank you, Pumla. We have reached the end of this part of the evening. It was a huge pleasure to have a better understanding of restorative justice from great examples. I would like to finish by thanking our guest speakers for their input into the discussion here and thanking everybody for listening. Thank you. Enjoy the great Italian hospitality.